Hello and welcome to chapter 14. Hi. Beneath the silver arches of the Sunfire's main cabin, Mystica rummaged in her storage compartment. She pulled out some fabric, then hobbled up behind Lucky and tugged at his hair hard. "Hey!" he yelped. "What are you doing?" "Please calm yourself," she said. "Have we not begun to trust one another, you and I? Now hold still. This won't hurt a bit." She began to braid his hair, plait over plait, lock over lock. "Oh, somebody at the door. Thank you." "Why not?" murmured the old lady as she worked. "His hair is long enough. He can borrow your boots. You're about the same size. And you've got another pair, haven't you? And I still have Jonathan's old lenses, you know. He can use them." The talk made Lucky nervous. What exactly was Mystica doing to him? And who was this Jonathan she'd mentioned? It was so hard to hold still as the old lady braided his hair, working it up into two great strands. It didn't hurt, but it felt tight and itchy across his scalp. He felt even more uncomfortable when she started to wrap the braids above his head in velvet fabric, twining silver thread around them, velvet and thread, just like he'd seen on the captain's horns and Frolix's. "You're making a disguise for me, aren't you?" he said. "You're making my hair look like horns." "No," she replied, twisting the threads up tight. "I'm making your hair into horns." "Huh?" he blinked. "You don't mean that's what AXA horns are already made of? Hair?" "Just hair," said Mystica. She snipped the threads and tied them off. "It's the traditional style for men. It's a great dishonour to be seen without your horns. Women wear their hair differently. Some have it up, some have it down, and then there's Bixa. Only Bixa, who has those ugly needles." "I need them," protested Bixa. I couldn't defend us without them." Lucky's mind was reeling. "But why would anyone shape their hair into horns?" he asked, struggling to understand. "Don't you know it looks like the devil?" "The horns point up to the stars," said Mystica simply. "They remind us where we all came from and where we all return." "And we're not going to change it just because groundlings don't like it," added Bixa. "Oh," he looked across at her. "So where are these boots I'm supposed to borrow from you?" He couldn't imagine boots that would fit over her hooves. "These boots," muttered Bixa. She reached down and hoisted up her trousers. She touched the inside of her leg and then slowly, carefully pulled up one of her hooves. She pulled and pulled and pulled until the hoof slid off her leg, revealing a foot. A bare foot with 5 long, slender toes. "You've got feet?" gasped Lucky. "Mm-hmm," said Bixa as she pulled the other boot off and put down by the first. He stared at it, stunned. There was a metallic sole along the bottom, the metal he'd glimpsed when they were doing astral martial arts. Above the sole was an area shaped like a hoof, big enough for a foot to fit in. It led up to a perfectly moulded ankle, calf, knee, but then there was an opening above the knee where the whole thing ended. Boots. They were massive, skin-tight, thigh-high boots. Not boots at all. "But you thought we all had hooves, didn't you?" scoffed Bixa. "You groundlings, you'll believe anything. How could we have hands up top and hooves below? It doesn't make sense." Lucky scratched his head at the base of his new horns. His mental picture of the AXA was changing so fast he felt dizzy. Why don't more people, more humans, know about this? "Perhaps it suits them not to know," Mystica shrugged. "People have a way of seeing what they expect to see. Not exactly what is there." "Okay," he said, trying to think his way into the situation. "So let me guess, your fiery eyes are just contact lenses, right?" "No," said Bixa. "Our eyes are real. They're the one big evolutionary difference between us. Ours are adapted for space travel, so they're very sensitive to a wider range spectrum of light." "So, when Mystica said she was going to make my eyes burn," Bixa shook her head and turned away. "Never you mind," said Mystica quietly. She rummaged in the compartment again and pulled out a tarnished silver box. "Of course, we can't change anything inside you, Lucky," she said, opening the box and fishing out a pair of purple contact lenses. "But these will make you look more like one of us on the surface, and they'll expand your vision a little too. Don't worry, dear. You're not the first human who needs to pass as an AXA." Lucky tried not to blink as she placed the soft lenses onto the surface of his eyes. "There," said Mystica. "You won't even notice them. Now they're in. Now put on Bixa's boots." He glanced at the hooves and then at Bixa. She wouldn't meet his gaze. "Go on," said Mystica. "Don't be shy." Very reluctantly he pulled them on, one at a time. It felt so strange. They were enormous and clumpy. He was bound to trip over his own feet in them. "Are you sure about this?" he said. "They're a little big." "Oh yes," snapped Bixa. "Stand up and see what happens." He did, and to his amazement the hooves fitted round his feet perfectly. They seemed to adjust to his shape, his posture, his movements, almost as if they were intelligent. He took a step forward, and it was like his feet suddenly had power steering. They were so well cushioned they made him feel 10 feet tall. He grinned. In boots like these, he thought, I could even climb a mountain. They're so comfortable, he marvelled, bouncing up and down. Of course they are, said Bixer. AXA technology. They adapt to their owner and their environment to give you the best footing. Now you've got a pair of your own, you might even stop falling over every time you walk down a corridor. She inspected him critically and sighed. Look, if you're really going to do this, then you need one more thing. She tapped the side of a column. It opened to reveal a hidden rack of gear, from which she pulled a silver coat, long, shiny, shimmery. It was like the wings of liquid metal, just like the ones they wore. Seriously, said Lucky. For me? Your very own space traveller's coat, she said. Like the boots, it adapts to the environment. Waterproof, windproof, and totally fireproof, of course. Now that's handy. Lucky ran his fingers across the sleeve. It felt cool and smooth like the surface of the astrolabe. He pulled it on, felt it billow up behind him. It's amazing, he said. Bixer pulled in her own coat and swirled it proudly around herself. Yeah, and we were wearing these when you groundlings were running around naked in the trees, she snorted, though some of you still do from time to time. Lucky was too thrilled with the coat to rise to the bait. It made him feel different, no longer the boy who'd grown up on a little moon, knowing nothing of the galaxy. He felt like a space traveller now, almost like part of the starship crew. Well, boy, asked Mystica, what do you say? Thank you. Your clothes are wonderful. The old lady beamed with pride. She touched the column again, turning its surface into a silver mirror. Have a look and see how wonderful, she said. Lucky stared into the mirror and saw a reflection so disturbing it stopped him dead in his tracks. Lucky stared. He still looked like himself, with all the same features, but it was as if he'd been born AXA instead of human. He had horns that pointed up to the sky, huge black cloven hooves, and violet eyes of flame. It was the only image of aliens that he'd grown up with, hating and fearing, the enemy staring back at him with his own face. Attention, everyone, came Captain Knox's voice on the comm. We're now approaching Leo 5. Strap up tight for landing. Lucky looked away from the mirror to the vid screens, where Bixer was trying to get a clear image of the view outside, and found himself staring at something even more disturbing. That through crackling static a solar system was coming into view. At its centre was a giant golden star with several planets orbiting around it. The largest was the fifth world out, Leo 5. It was golden too, its continents all dotted with points of light like miniature constellations. It seemed to be a world of plenty, shining under its sun. But further away, in the far distance, green fire filled the blackness of space, completely filled it. Lucky could see nothing beyond it whatsoever. It was as if space itself ended in a wall of fire. At first he thought it must be interference on the vid screens, like the static, but it seemed almost solid, a barrier beyond which he couldn't imagine passing. Maybe it's these contact lenses, he thought, making space look weird. He squinted at the vid screens from another angle, but still the green fire was there, flashing with electric threat. What is that? He asked. Mystica turned to look, adjusted his headscarf anxiously. Ah, yes, you can see it now, your government's proudest achievement, the space wall. Lucky gaped at it. He'd never been this near to the space wall, never imagined how uncanny it would really look. How am I ever going to get through that? He said under his breath. Don't you fret, said Mystica. She made a final adjustment to his horns and stepped back to inspect him again. A smile as warm as sunrise spread across her face. You're one of us now. We will take care of you. End of the chapter. Perhaps Lucky you could draw Lucky in disguise. See what that's like. And now we understand a bit more about how the AXA look or appear to look, and how it's easy to judge a book by its cover. Predictions. Who is Jonathan? Bye-bye.